Well, killed about half my position yesterday with morning with Starbucks, but paid off. At least the other half. It actually popped finally. Let's talk about this being crushed. It was kept being crushed down, and from here to here, all the way, just could not get above 30 to 40% gain on that contract. And today, it finally just popped. Went to like 200. Man, oh man, what a mess. But got it. So it's done. Take it. 95 strike from down here at 83. Happy about that. I'm going to wait. I might re-enter if it comes back down. Um, Especially if it came back to this area around 89. I think I'd be pretty happy with that entry if it ever came back. Who knows? At this point, really could run all the way back up to 112, but my contracts were for next week, so I'm not going to hold on to that given what's going on over here. It's just a lot of question marks, a little bit too much. Obviously, you guys are here for GameStop, so great. Yeah, I don't know if it was just one thing or the other, but I'm not seeing a lot of particularly strong looking stock stuff this morning. Everything kind of popped and then looks like it might have some problems, so we'll see. I'm not particularly thrilled about AMD. I was up yesterday on that. Decided not to take profit. Still up like 40%, but I don't know. It's a long-term contract, so it's out till mid-August. I don't know. Is it worth trying to get out and get back in? Probably not. We'll see. Everything else this morning for me is pretty red. I had expected some kind of a last hoorah here, like a last big pop, but so far nothing's really showing a lot of teeth. Not seeing it anyways. We'll see. It's kind of the way that things go is there's typically like a well, so the thing is like we had a good setup, but then the news cycle didn't really pay off as well as I had hoped. GME had an okay earnings. It wasn't the best thing ever. It wasn't a double beat. It did hit on EPS. I mean, it's positive EPS, which is good. And it beat by quite a bit. It's almost double the expectations. Earnings whiffed a little bit, meaning revenue. I'm sorry, not earnings. That's what they did, just set it up, but whatever. Revenue missed a little bit. I was reading about it, and it seemed like what I read about it, they were making like a bigger deal out of it than it needed to be made. Because to me, it's like, yeah, it missed, but considering how much cash they have in the bank, this is like pretty much negligible. So the sell-off to me is a technical sell-off. I talked about it yesterday. There was a pretty decent chance this was going to end in a sort of a distributive fashion to some degree, like right here because of the setup. But I've argued, and I think I'm going to stick with this for now, is that this is probably not going to last forever. We're going to get some kind of a bounce out here, and then I do think that it's very possible it could be running up pretty hard. The thing about these motions is a lot of times it takes about an hour. So I'm not ready to just kind of throw in the towel just yet on GME. I think that there's a good chance this is going to rebound. We'll find out. And I was actually looking at options this morning to see what I could see, maybe for next week or something. 'Cause I'm thinking it wouldn't be more than about a week. It's a mixed bag here. July 11th coming up pretty soon. It's like a month away, but it feels like it's around the corner, right? And this China talk stuff didn't really end poorly. They're calling it like a sort of a truce or a framework of sorts. I don't really get it per se. I'm not really sure I understand. Doesn't look like news to me that was very solid. Just my opinion about it. So I have a lot of opinions, but the overall talks didn't really look convincing to me. Like it was something that was, more solid. Like, hey, we've had this, and this is what happened. It was more like, again, it was kind of like they already did this. Talked about like a framework. So I'm a bit confused as to why we're kind of back to where we were, I suppose, on that. But whatever. So yeah, I'm actually looking for bullish positioning here. I think that this drop is pretty significant. The fact that it dropped this creek right here is significant because it jumped above it. It's not that this is like guaranteed to be bullish at all. I think that if you look at it that way, you'd probably be wrong. Which is not what I'm saying. So I'm not saying I'm guaranteeing that this is bullish or something. But I do think that you have to sort of just take it for what it is. And right now, it's not looking great. But it's also one of these things that I feel... Yesterday we were talking about it, and I thought that there was a pretty good chance that this was going to have... I was talking about it in terms of an upthrust and on the inversion. There's a pretty good chance this is going to have a bounce out. Now, if it doesn't, and it kind of craps out here, we may see some downside for a while. I don't think it's necessarily going to be significant unless it drops below like 25. But for now, I'm actually, again, like I said, I'm kind of bullish on it. I don't feel, don't really feel that bearish right now on this. So I don't know. You guys can feel free to share your thoughts while I'm kind of mulling it over here. I'm looking at contracts. See if I want to buy something. So I might do is like late June or early July. And see if there's something that looks good. Maybe around the 35 strike. I think it could go up to 40, but I'm looking at that because of, well, there's a lot of reasons, but... And I think they'll probably move pretty fast if this can get some traction today. It's going to be a mixed bag, so what we'll probably want to do is look at this on a really short time frame and see if there's a, there's kind of a buy in here. So let's take a look. So I found some 50-cent contracts. That's not too bad for June 27th. That's a 35 strike. We'll see. And then I think that in terms of downside in extended trading hours, this did go really low. But we talked about this yesterday as well. It's kind of like, actually it doesn't look that different, does it? It's kind of like when you look at these big picture, there are some things that are clearly different, that need to be accounted for. But there's also things that aren't different. Like this did make consistently higher highs. Yeah, like this is different, obviously. And this clearly like broke down in extended hours. This is like a kind of a wedge, right? But notice that like where the wedge is, it was very sideways and it ultimately didn't make a lower low yet. So it's like technically this could just be a creek jump being about to happen, which was sort of what I was saying yesterday. Is like, this isn't really a cut and dry range, in my opinion. There were things in it that didn't look too hot. Certain elements that were kind of distributive, like this shape right here is kind of a distributive shape. This motion right there. Um, because you're basically kind of combing low and you're failing to kind of advance high. But the way in which this was built in the range is kind of deceptive. It doesn't really seem to have the same markings as like a normal distribution would have. So, not to regurgitate everything we did yesterday, but I was feeling that what was most likely was we'd probably get a drop. This has like a shallow S-curve look to it. Now, a shallow S-curve, if I were looking at extended trading hours where I am right now, and I was asked about this yesterday, I think I probably would do well to switch between the two more often. It was a good reminder. But if I were looking at this as a shallow S-curve, normally I would think that this probably does go lower, like this does go below this 2777 mark. That wouldn't be way out of the question. And maybe even, again, I don't know, I'm not going to mess with this too much. I feel like that's probably where it should be, like right there. But I suppose you could make an argument that like, well, I think it's going to drop down to this SOW realm that you talked about. Granted, that is a liquidity dive if it does, because you'd have a lot of implications if it drops beneath 2744. The way that I'm charting this is that this is essentially like a really critical reversal level for bears. Everything else, though, could easily stand as a spring. Like, easily. Anything between here and there, I think could easily stand as a spring if it reverses and jumps the main creek. I've got this like kind of pink bracket here. This is the last kind of major creek, right? And let me see, because they did pop in extended hours as well. So this changes the chart quite a bit when you try to use extended hours, because this obviously looks very distributive. When it pops up high, it comes back down. But I noted it again yesterday that, a lot of this has to do with like how high it goes, and like you don't want it to go too high and all this other junk. You would still need to look backwards, and I don't think it pushed over this top. It did not. So it's a distributive style action. Like it's clearly like a wick that's meant to drive you back down. But in the grand scheme of things, like this is still, I don't know, I feel like it still looks pretty good because it didn't go above the top here. Like had that happened, I'd be a little bit more So when we look at extended trading hours, what I see is an M. I see another one of those kind of weaker shapes, but I still see the M, right? This looks like a bottom, and it made a higher low right here. And then this morning it went back down and tapped that on the downside. Okay. It's in the zone that we kind of wanted it to be in. There's two spots, and it quite literally is between those two spots. So, I mean, it could not have been any more exact in that way. It's like bouncing between those two spots. This to me does look like an potential M cross. So again, extended hours may look pretty different at times, and you may have a bit of a controversial take on it if you kind of only use one or the other, perhaps. But I tend to just mainly focus on regular trading hours. So this is what I mean when I said M cross. Like it's clearly like a jump here and a retest in extended trading hours. And then if you look at that as a auto reaction and a phase B top, then this really doesn't look bad at all. This could be a potential for spring, or it could be an LPS. And actually, if that's a phase B bottom, then this might be just a straight up. Yeah, it went through that bottom, so right here. So it's possible that this is already a spring. Yeah, it's possible. The only major requirement, of course, at this point is that it has to, jump the creek. My guess is, again, it's going to be all in the same pocket right here anyways, so. So probably, I'm going to ignore the wick there, because that's a bit excessive. Obviously, that's important to note that it's there, and that this could be a distribution range, but we already sort of know that because, again, we have the other creek coming across. Don't really find that to be particularly interesting then. So that area right here is going to be the key right there. And you can see there's like everything's intersecting right there too. So what that means to me is that when it hits $30, between $30 and $30.50, maybe even a little lower, like $30.40, that region is absolutely critical for the time being, for the immediate price action. And that's assuming that you get there like right now. I mean, we could take some time and do something else here. It could go down again, blah, 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 blah. But this looks like an M cross. It looks like it's going to rebound. I think this area becomes hypercritical. This is the ice level in the extended trading hours. This is the creek in the regular trading hours. This is the main wave. You can see like that wave coming up. This is the long-term ice. There's a trajectory there. And then now we've got this other creek here that was established on the downside. Really in the last day. So it's a lot going on right there at 30 to 30, 40. Yep, that's the level. So how about SPY, OKLO? Yeah, we'll check them out. The reason I'm looking at GameStop is just had their earnings yesterday. So I want to focus on that a little bit more this morning. I will talk about AMC too because it's, part and parcel here, similar setup. So my big trade this morning was Starbucks. It finally popped. It went up 200% after me complaining about it yesterday not moving. So yeah, same deal. This is AMC. It's got, I don't know. It did the same kind of thing where it had this potential M cross right here. You can see it. It jumped up and over it, but it made lower lows. It's kind of a bizarre setup to me because it doesn't look particularly great, this tiny little micro range. It actually looks pretty much exactly like what we see on the big picture, which is sort of weird. But I think that was just a matter of like, let's just trade this other area. It's not really worth talking about AMC unless it pops above that 362 level. I've been talking about that a lot. I've got an alert set right now for basically like 356. I don't know how quickly it's going to get there if it gets there today. And that's a big if. But you're probably going to have some stopping points if it's like right here, for example. This would be a critical area. And then there was a longer term hook level that's up pretty high around like 360, which we got to be careful about. That's the possibility right here. This does buy up, but then drops back down. So anyways, so this morning I'm going to watch and see what happens with GameStop. I didn't really feel like there was anything particularly negative about their earnings. Nothing hyper positive either, but it was just like good, or I thought it was pretty good, like average to low miss on revenue, but then lots of cash on hand and beating on EPS is really good. So I don't know. Not sure that really matters. Maybe it's a sell the news moment. I'm really just going to focus on the technicals here. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, AMD is kind of turning into kind of a bit of a loser here, but mainly because AMD already had a big push up, and I don't think this occurred, so I'm not particularly concerned yet. This motion right here, this needed to happen, and it hadn't happened yet. So, like I said, Starbucks was kind of my big one this morning. It finally popped, and it looks pretty much like what I thought from a while back, which is kind of nice. It's always good to get it pretty darn close. That was pretty close. Within a day and $1, that's pretty darn close. So I was really happy with that. Finally got that 200% on that move after waiting for it to move past 30% for weeks. I told you guys, I told like half my position yesterday for like 30%, and then today they were like 200%. That's how it goes, which is silly because like I knew today might be a big big day for some in the market. So I don't know what I was thinking. It just wasn't. Yeah, Apple still struggling kind of here in the same spot. It's at 0% right now. It's not looking great. To me, this is starting to look more like a head and shoulder the more this goes on, weirdly enough. I know it doesn't like kind of have that appearance because it didn't go higher, but I'm just waiting to see if it holds up or if it comes back down. And I'm kind of just tired of it being sideways. I was waiting to see if there was some good news with the trade agreements. That didn't really pan out. Unfortunately, there's not really much news to be said. It was just like hey, we're gonna agree about something kind of thing. And that's not really what I wanted to hear. But the overall picture here is semi bleak. But if it manages to have a reversal bullish wise here, it's going to be pretty strong. I think it's going to move to 300. So that's been kind of waiting to see. That's a big move. I know. I know what I'm saying, right, when I say that. But it is a really important, I think, setup here to see it fulfill. And again, just like we're talking about with GameStop and some others, like sometimes that motion down is needed and it's probable. And I think that it could be right here, for Apple. They haven't done anything to really impress during their recent conference, so I'm kind of bummed out about that too, but it is what it is. We'll check the S&P 500 real quick. So I was asked about that. And we'll come back around to GameStop. Not take our eyes off too long. Yeah, I don't know. Nothing really to say here that's new. I think it could get up to this 608 to 607 to 607 to 608 level. There was a rising wedge here, as you can see. So bears are going to try to like knock it down here. The reason that I'm thinking it might not fall is because I don't think that the target was met. I'm not going to go like I wouldn't die on a hill over this one because this is very speculative in some ways, but there was clear indication that this should probably get up to about 608. Okay. When I do these measurements and other things like that, it's just a measurement. So those numbers don't always get met the first time. Like you might think it's going to get there and it could take a different route and get there in a minute. I mean, this could break down like partially to like 595 and then come back up again in a week to 608 and then go down, So we don't know how an interaction underneath this particular trend would look. A lot of times it's easy just to kind of draw it straight down. But what I mean is that like, we don't know, this could drop, bounce here and come back up in like an elaborate hook and then drop. So there's just a number of like question marks. I don't really worry too much about that. I'm just kind of thinking, right now I would not be surprised to see it have a bit of an upthrust towards 608 to 610 and then drive back the other way. But that being said, I wouldn't trade upside here because like that's not really much upside, right? It doesn't really make sense to do that. It's essentially in a top. This is a previous market top. At this point, there's almost no reason to trade it to the upside. And I think that you're probably going to see some evidence of that, with some weakness from the bulls. Obviously, the sellers are going to be starting to try to take the helm. You have obviously the motivation of like, let's go make a new high or let's get back to the previous all-time high. For those that want to get out of a position, this area right here, again, probably the last major stop before all-time highs, and that's the 608 level. So I'm of the opinion that it would have been beneficial to get there, but I also don't know for sure that it's going to do that. And at this point, I mean, it's fairly overextended. I wouldn't say it's horrible. Like we saw that cross back up here on the MACD yesterday. We talked about that. And then this is clearly still a rising wedge. Could it come back up again and be overbought again? Absolutely. This is a 4-hour time frame. SPY can get frequently overbought with just some mild backups. This is very common in a bull market. In a more kind of a bearish or sideways market, it's a little less common to see that. sustained. So again, I'm really just expecting to see some kind of a divergence here, to be honest. Like have this push up, and then if this pushes up, it'd be a bearish divergence on a top. And that's why I'm thinking that it's going to top, but it's got to do it lower here. Hey, help him out.
I can't.
Go backwards on it. And gently grab his paw. And pull it up and over. There you go.
He's scared now. Scared.
Disturbed his slumber, so.
Well, I'm trying to pet him.
Yeah. So anyways, the SPY to me may have a little bit of life left in it, but I'm expecting it to be kind of I call it a double flush, but like an upside downside kind of move. So like a pump up, and then it just kind of pulls back through. I don't know why I'm sort of stuck on that idea right now, but that's just where I am right now. So maybe there's something else that could happen. But today, there's not really much to say. It's kind of sitting flat. That news didn't really hit, and then there's CPI. So I don't know. That was supposed to come out this morning. So the fact that it's kind of flat also makes me question what those CPI numbers were. Maybe they were as expected. I don't know. Let me look it up. I think it was today. Inflation rate edged higher by 2.4%. Okay. It says inflation pressures ease on a monthly basis. U.S. inflation rises 0.1% in May from prior month, which is less than expected. So it's actually better than expected. And of course, Trump's telling everybody that the inflation numbers are good, so they should cut rates. Well, listen, the CPI being a mild beat here is a positive news for the market. Thank you for posting that. I wouldn't say it was like extremely great. 0.1%, less than expected, is good. I'm not going to, let me see, I'm reading the numbers. I didn't see the actual numbers. I just read the headlines. CPI 1% month to month, expected 0.2%. Okay. Well, I mean, that's a pretty decent improvement then. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Well, regardless, that would be seen as positive across the market. So